Bush versus Gore, 2000. Remember the year? It took 36 days to settle that one. We've got time, and we're going to see what happened. In the meantime, President Trump can make all kinds of plans. I'm Randall Terry. This is Voice of Resistance.
Those who forsake the law praise the wicked. Those who uphold the law resist them. Welcome to the Voice of Resistance.
These are days that can be very troubling. The future of our country is at stake. You know, every time I saw Joe Biden stand behind that lectern when he bothered to come out of his hole in the ground, it had that thing on it, fighting for America's soul, or a battle for the soul of our nation. And I would cringe every time I read it because it was right. And it wasn't in the way that he meant it. Like Caiaphas, when he said it is necessary that one should die for the people, he was inadvertently prophesying about the death of Jesus, but he was a monster. Caiaphas was a monster. Biden has been talking about the battle for the soul of our nation. And if Biden is sworn in on January 20th, I shudder to think what will happen with the soul of our nation. Will we who believe in God, who believe in right and wrong, will we turn tail and run? Will we have a general in President Trump, even after he's out of office? Will we have a general in Senator Cotton from Arkansas? I don't believe we'll have a general in Mitch McConnell. I don't believe we'll have a general in Lindsey Graham. Both of them have done a superb job at different points being wingmen for the president. But that's what they are. They're wingmen. They are not front men, men who lead armies. They're men who facilitate the leader. So if President Trump in the end does not prevail, what will happen? All right, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's talk about where we are right now. As you probably know, Georgia is in the middle of a hand recount. They're going to recount by hand the votes of every single person in the state. But here's the question, and I still have yet to see an answer. And this is making me crazy. The question is, when they are counting these by hand, can they check the signatures? Can they check the address? Can they check to see if the person is a legal voter in the state of Georgia at the residence in the voter record? And I don't know that they're going to be able to do that. So if you take 50,000 fraudulent ballots and you throw them in with the other 6 million, and President Trump loses by 20,000 votes, then what good is the recount? You're just recounting fraudulent ballots. And that is what I still cannot get a straight answer on. And I apologize, but it leads me to my next point, and that is that the cover-up of what is going on, both through the big media and through the tech giants, Facebook, Google, Twitter, the cover-up is so extensive. You would have to be writing a novel to come up with a story this far-fetched. And I used to read Tom Clancy novels. Great novelist. Tons of facts. Tons. That man did so much research. If I was reading a Tom Clancy novel that had this scenario playing out, with the media refusing to look at things and big tech closing down entire discussion boards, entire groups, I would have said, Tom, you're better than this. This is lousy writing. I mean, it's just too far-fetched. At least in a Tom Clancy novel, what he was proposing might happen with the Russians in the Hunt for Red October, for example. It was a possibility. Or in a drug war with a Central or Southern American country. These are possibilities. This is how it would play out. If he'd have written what's going on right now, I would have shut the book and said, come on, this is not any fun. It's too far-fetched. When you have major news networks saying there is not a shred of evidence of any voter fraud, they're lying. They're lying with straight faces. They're lying with passion. They're lying with conviction. And because so many tens of millions of people get their news from CNN, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, they really believe there's no evidence. Trump's just being a sore loser. There's no evidence of voter fraud. It's nonsense. Oh, but there is evidence. There's a lot of evidence. And the reason that Trump's attorneys are on the ground right now in all of those states is to look for more evidence. We now have scores of affidavits of individuals from these various states saying this happened, that happened, I saw this with my own eyes, I saw that with my own eyes. There's evidence. There's evidence of a lot of dead people voting. And as I mentioned on the last show, well, now what they're starting to do is say, well, there's not extensive voter fraud, just a little. How do we know? Let's send in some forensic investigators. You would think that they would want it, but I digress. Let me take a break. I'll be right back. The other night I watched Joe Biden's so-called acceptance speech, and there was a lot of people in the house. It was a teen party of some kind, dance party or something, and there were adults, parents that were scattered around. And there was complaints from people. I don't want to hear this man's voice. Please turn it down. Do we have to watch this? And of course, I'm prepping for my television show while I'm at a party by watching Joe Biden. So I watched the whole thing. If you haven't seen it, it's worth watching so that you too can feel sick to your stomach. Talking about unity, turning down the temperature. Mr. Biden, I'm glad you want to turn down the temperature. Does that include AOC, who says she wants a list of people who supported Trump? Wants the donors to be exposed? Does that include Governor Cuomo up in New York, who said if President Trump wasn't the president, he'd have decked him, punched him in the face? Does that include those people, Mr. Biden? I don't think it does. I don't think it does include them. The issue is people wanting to believe a lie. Sometimes people have itching ears, and they just want to be told a lie. We're energy independent for the first time in 70 years. We make more energy than we consume. This is a path to freedom and prosperity, those two things. It means that we are no longer having to beg for Middle Eastern oil. We do not have to fund terrorism at our gas pumps. The bulk of Islamic terrorist money comes from petrodollars. That's just a known fact, okay? Saudi Arabia is not a state sponsor of terrorism, but the single greatest source of revenue for terrorists comes from Saudi Arabian oil sheiks, wealthy people connected to the oil industry. Yes, Iran is a state sponsor of terrorism, and they're using petrodollars as well. But Saudi Arabia is a larger contributor. People from Saudi Arabia are larger financially, a larger contributor to Islamic terrorism. And that's all just oil traded with the Western nations, and with us included. So finally, because of President Trump's policies, fracking, putting in the Keystone Pipeline, allowing more drilling offshore, and opening up ANWR, finally opening ANWR up in Alaska, that little patch of earth. And now former Vice President Biden has come out and said, yeah, we're going to look at all of those. We're going to review all of those permits. involving whether or not we're going to have oil taken from public lands. We're gonna put a hold on them. We're gonna maybe start taking some back. See, he was pushed into a corner to say he wouldn't stop fracking, but he wasn't pushed into the corner about permits on public lands. ANWR up in Alaska is on public lands. Now they only need about a 2,000 acre plot. That's all they need. It's very small. When you see the expanse out there, it's not a lot of space. But if they pull the permits, that's the end. And then what? You see the gas where we live. Yesterday I was out at a Costco or something, $1.59 a gallon, $1.59. We haven't had prices of gas this low since Bush W. was in office, the early days of his presidency. We are in the catbird seat when it comes to energy. But Vice President Biden, should he assume office, is going to put us in harm's way, take away our energy independence, put us back where we were. And there are millions of people who tangentially or directly have jobs that are connected to fossil fuel, plastics, oil, gas, jet engine, fluid. That's just one element where Biden is a threat to our freedom and our security. One element. And he made his announcement. Well, Mr. Biden, I'm glad that you want to be kind and that you don't want to be divisive. Could you just leave us where we are right now with our energy? That would show goodwill on your part. But he can't, because he's beholden to AOC and the loonies of the left. I've got to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit about the fun going on inside the Democrat Party and the House of Representatives. Don't go away. Our brand sucks. That's what a Democrat congressman who's a so-called moderate said. Now, he was actually taking a shot at the squad, the 4 lunatic left women headed by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the people that are openly saying we want socialism, openly saying we want the Green New Deal. And he looked at the numbers. So without big cities and without the coasts, you had a repudiation of the Democrat agenda. This, again, is why there are people who are saying it's a statistical impossibility that 450,000 ballots in these various swing states were cast for Biden and none of the downline ticket. One article I read yesterday said these are the worst coattails since 1932. A coattail means when Reagan won against Carter in 1980, his coattails, the down ballot, the down ticket, brought in a whole bunch of people into the House of Representatives and a whole bunch of people into the U.S. Senate. Biden's coattails were horrendous. And in state legislatures, governor's mansions, in the U.S. House, it looks like the Democrats are on track to lose 12 seats. Nancy Pelosi was talking about winning 15 or 20 seats. They almost lost the House. They are not going to get the Senate. It's 50-48 right now. It looks like there's going to be 2 runoffs in Georgia. And even the New York Times is having to admit that it's a long shot for Democrats to win in Georgia with those 2 Senate runoffs. It's possible. I wouldn't count it out. You'll see at least $150 to $200 million spent. At least that much. Remember, over the course of the months, there was $100 million spent, over $100 million against against Mitch McConnell, and over $100 million against Lindsey Graham. McConnell won by over 15 points, Lindsey Graham around 10 points. So these were blowouts, in spite of the fact that over $100 million was spent against each of them. So there does come a point when it doesn't matter how much money you're spending, the ideas, the ideals, the philosophy of a candidate is going to make the voters prevail. But nevertheless, inside of the Democrat Party right now, they're usually pretty tight-lipped. They usually have a pretty united front. The infighting is spilling out. The recriminations are coming out. There is an open discussion whether or not Nancy Pelosi should be the Speaker of the House again. There are people who say, no, she's too beholden to the lunatic left. She messed up with her dealings with Trump, and her leadership hurt us to the point where not a single incumbent Republican was defeated, not one. Most open seats went to Republicans, and there were 6 or 7 Democrat incumbents who lost their seat. Goodbye. So when you consider that Biden, this was supposed to be a great blue wave, the Democrats are going to sweep across the country. No. You got swept. And if all of the numbers that are coming up with these various races had held true for President Trump, he would be the next president. We'd still hold the Senate, and we might hold the House. Now, he still may be the next president. That's why there's all these investigations going on. I don't know what they have in place, friends. I don't know what they have in place, and I don't know how many forensic experts, people that can go back and look at fraudulent computer alterations, uploads that didn't exist, taking votes away. I don't know how many forensic experts they have on the ground to look at handwriting, to see, oh yeah, these 500 ballots all have the exact same handwriting. Not the ballots, the envelopes. That would be evidence, hard evidence, of a voter sweatshop, of a voter fraud sweatshop, where you just get 20, 30, 50, 100 people in a room and just start writing. Or the stories emerging about the van pulling up and people jumping out and starting to write. You've got to have experts on the ground, and I don't know if they have them. So I, like you, am heartened by the fact that Justice Alito told all of the Pennsylvania vote counters to separate every single vote that came in after 8 o'clock on November 3rd. Keep them out of that count, because those votes ultimately were votes that were counted illegally. The legislature in the state of Pennsylvania has the authority to set election law according to the Constitution. So the Secretary of State in PA just can't say, hey, we're going to do this. She has no authority to do that in state law in Pennsylvania or under the U.S. Constitution. So the question will be, how many votes will be invalidated? I'm going to take a quick break, and we come back. I'll make one more emphasis, and then I'll talk to you about one other thing. Don't go away. I believe it was Joseph Stalin, the demonic dictator of Russia, who said, the people who cast votes decide nothing. The people who count votes decide everything. Something to that effect. Well said, Mr. Stalin. It's evil, but it's well said. So we don't know if the illegal votes are going to be counted in the recounts. If they're doing a recount in Wisconsin and in Michigan, that doesn't mean anything. What means something is, are they going to throw out the illegal votes so that they're not counted? That's the issue. Now let me talk to you about communications. Part of my work, my ministry for the past 40 years has been in communications. Radio, television, newspaper interviews. The people who can control the flow of information are ultimately the ones who can control a nation. It's that simple. I don't know if you've ever thought about it, but if you think through what people tell you and what you need to know to prepare for something, If something bad is coming and there's people with the knowledge that it's coming and they don't tell you, they can do more damage to you just by what they don't say. And conversely, if there's things that we need to know, things that are happening, and they're withholding the information from us, and that we would have done, we would have fought, we would have stood, we would have cried out, we would have said, look, when people who control communications hide facts, prop up the guilty, misdirect, mislead the populace, that's the biggest threat on the horizon. It's even bigger threat than a Biden presidency or a Pelosi speakership. So I'm just letting you know, I don't have any solutions right now, but I'm telling you, the biggest threat we're facing right now is the corruption in communication from big media and big tech. Have a good weekend.